So the theme today, as you know, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the theme today, as you know, is biodiversity conservation in the age of AI, and we'll be featuring speakers from Alternet member institutes GESBIO, NINA, UK-CEH, and DICAM. So the background of the Alternet Seminar Series, it was initially launched in 2020 with a specific focus on the science policy interface. And this was led under the wonderful direction of Juliet Young. So we're very happy to now be relaunching this series with a broader scope, including all topics that pertain to biodiversity and ecosystem sciences. So that includes science policy interface, but also research, applied practice, and more. And we're very grateful to have two new Alternet steering committee members leading the seminar series activity. So that would be Tamara Murillo of GESBIO, one of our newest Alternet Partner Institutes, and Kyle Jewell of DICAM at Uni Trento, both of whom will be helping to moderate the seminar. So later in the program, we will hear from Jose Guerrero and Tamara Murillo, both of GESBIO, Benjamin Kutosis of NINA, and Lisa Norton of UK-CEH. But first, we'll have a short introduction to Alternet from Jiske van Dijk. So Jiske is based at our partner institute, NINA, in Norway, and she's also serving as the chair of the Alternet Council. So take it away, Jiske.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for this introduction, and many, many thanks to Tamara and Kyle and you, Tyler, for organizing this webinar. I'm looking very much forward to hear more about it and from the keynotes. I will tell a little bit about Alternet in the next 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. We started as a network of excellence in 2003. So we had our anniversary last year, or 20 years. We are the European Research Network of Europe. At the moment, we have 34 groups being partner of the Alternet network from 21 European countries, all from in the west UK to the east in Romania, and north in Scandinavia, NINA and SICA in Finland, to the south in Portugal. And we bring together research, biodiversity research, to assess changes in biodiversity, analyze the effect of those changes on ecosystem services, and we inform the public and policymakers about this at a European scale. So we do a lot about integration and collaboration among our partner institutes. We work transdisciplinary in nature, and we bring together expertise from both natural and social science and support platforms for high impact interaction with policymakers, the scientific community, and the public. So what do we do? We facilitate and engage with the science, among others, by hosting the Eclipse mechanism. We organize yearly Alternet summer schools in Paris, which is a 10 days learning or training for young researchers and early career researchers in interdisciplinary approaches to biodiversity and ecosystem research. And we do this already since 2006. We bring together diverse scientific, policy, stakeholder, practitioners and NGOs together in our biannual Alternet conferences that we organize. We have a career research network, which is called A4CAP, where we have different events and opportunities. We have a funding opportunity for high impact research projects, which is called the Alternet Collaborative Project Initiative. Then we do a lot about communication and dissemination. We also have a platform where we enable international consortium building for European projects and internal sharing of funding opportunities. It's called the Call Exchange. And we work closely together with the LTER, the Long-Term Ecological Research Network, and the Long-Term Socio-Ecological Research Network, and LiveWatch. For Alternet was, in this LTR network, and we have partnerships with Biodiversity and with the peer institutes. How about the different and thank you,
Another
Tyler.
thing that we should mention is that Alternet is always open to accepting new partner institutes. So if any of you are at institutes that are not currently belonging to the Alternet community and are interested in membership, please reach out to us. We'd be very happy to discuss that possibility. So I think we can
Thank you, Tyler.
begin the seminar proper then.
Yep. Thanks, Tyler and GESBIO for the introduction. So as Tyler was briefly mentioning earlier, so the seminar is about AI, very hot topic. We read about it virtually every day. It's becoming one of probably the most defining technologies of our time, changing how we work, how we search for information, and even sometimes how we decide what counts as evidence. And well, in many fields, it does kind of promise this idea of speed and scale and all sorts of new kinds of insights, but it also raises a lot of difficult questions, for example, about trust or bias, and often even the boundary between what is real and what is generated. So for biodiversity conservation, these questions are quite important, given that conservation often, it depends on observing the living world quite carefully. So, for example, knowing what species are present, how habitats are changing, and also how people understand and value nature. So, for example, AI can help us process large amounts of ecological data from images and videos to ground-based photographs, but it also can create some misleading representations of what wildlife and ecosystems are. So today's seminar is not just about new AI tools, but it's also about how AI may reshape the way we know, monitor, and also communicate biodiversity. So just so before we begin, please use the chat for questions, and we'll get back to them at the end of the 3 talks we have scheduled today. And depending on the amount of time we have, we'll try to answer as many as possible and get discussion going. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the seminar, so just feel free to answer your questions at any time. So our first speakers today are Tamara Murillo and Jose Guerrero, who have been working together on the topic of AI, specifically concerning the threats to conservation from artificial intelligence generated images and videos. Tamara is a researcher at the University of Cordoba, where she's working on biodiversity, education, and citizen science. Jose is a professor at the zoology department at the University of Cordoba, where his work focuses on biodiversity monitoring and the impact of land use change on biodiversity. So, Tamara and Jose, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. I am presenting. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it? Okay. I can't see you while I am talking.
It's perfect now, Tamara.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that introduction, Kyle. As you said, of course, we are going to present this talk entitled Threats to Conservation from AI-generated wildlife images and videos. Okay. We have been analyzing people connection with nature and biodiversity literacy for years, especially among young children, and we found that there is a general disconnection between society and nature, and that the biodiversity literacy is quite limited. So additionally, also the findings of our most recent study indicate that the aspect which declines most as we grow older is the affective dimension of connection with nature. So if people don't feel this emotional connection with nature, and there is a lack of knowledge about the existing biodiversity, people are less likely to develop this conservation or pro-environmental behaviors, attitudes, or action. But what are the causes related to this situation? Well, previous studies talk about urbanization, or books, movies, or tales that represent exotic or charismatic species, and of course this excessive use of new technologies and social media. And in this regard, we have found that as well as these things, generative AI is having a huge effect on the lack of knowledge about biodiversity and connection with nature. So in today's society, individuals are constantly exposed to social media content, but much of this content has been generated by AI. And this is a fact which is often not indicated at all. So the constant consumption of unreal biodiversity and nature content might have serious consequences for people's knowledge and belief on long term. So this is of critical importance in children who are in these early stages of learning and development, and they are shaping their knowledge according to what they see or what they experience. So we have conducted this study in which we analyzed AI-generated content. And this is having a negative effect on people, creating kind of misleading impression of nature. And the factors contributing to this issue are social media, of course, since the algorithms prioritize viral content over the authentic one, and there is no requirement to identify the AI-generated content. Also, the anthropomorphism displayed in this content enhance the species appeal and evoke a stronger emotional connection, but the content is specifically designed for this purpose with the intention of promoting likes, comments, sharing, etc. But it doesn't matter if it represents reality or not. And finally, the current lack of connection with nature, because people don't have this a strong reference point due to the literacy limitations. So individuals may face difficulties in discerning the veracity of what they are seeing. So at this point, we have not only a society more and more disconnected from nature, but also a society with a misperception and an unreal idea of what is nature. And this situation impacts directly on the conservation of biodiversity. particularly on terms of distortion of reality regarding animal species or behaviors or threats, and of course other impacts that of which my colleague Jose is going to talk about now.
Okay, thank you, Tamara, for the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Please, you move to the next slide, please. Yes, now I'm going to explain why this kind of video can be problematic. What are the negative consequences of interpreting this post as a real content? First, some hyperrealistic content can show animal with no real behavior. No? There is often a bias towards affiliative behavior and human-like behavior. And if you read the comments, many people, when they watch this video, they use terms as kindness, love, gratitude, or friendship to describe the behavior of the animal. No? So, in my opinion, this words simplify, the complexity of the evolution of the ecology of the animal behavior. No? If you use, especially when you use some red hat emoji to describe this behavior, I think the nature is more wonderful than these words. Here is only an example, how the people describe this behavior as a true mother love. Okay, but what about the male of the bird that they also contribute to the parental care? Or what about the reptiles or fish that in which this species there is no parental care at all? They are bad parents. So this kind of problem we can see when we interpret this behavior of the animal as a human behavior. Next, please, Tamara. Other videos show unrealistic interspecific relation between species, including prey and predator. Here there are three examples. On the right, there is a gorilla with a deer, okay? But actually, they are not friends, of course, in the nature, because when the gorilla leaves, there are no deers, okay? In the middle, there is a snake trying to prey on birds. And in this kind of videos, usually the snake are portrayed as the bad ones, and the birds of mammal as the good one. Okay, and unfortunately, some users say write some comment like "thanks to the mom to save the chick from the snake," but actually, predation is a so common natural behavior, a natural process in the nature. And the last example is a polar bear covered with parasitides, which obviously is not real. But if you read some comments, some people feel sorry because this animal is injured. Okay, so they think that this is a real content. Next, please, Tamara. This is a good example of how people react to AI video, because this was the first video, hyperrealistic video created by artificial intelligence. And at that moment, the people didn't know that artificial intelligence can create this kind of content. This video shows a polar bear being rescued by fishermen. And in these videos includes some of these issues that we are discussing now. Lack of knowledge, simplification, human-like behavior, and misunderstanding the consequence of interact with wildlife. If you read the comment, the people think that this video was real and is correct to rescue polar bear. No? And this is not correct. No? The polar bear don't need our help in most of the case. They are wild animals. Please, Tamara, next. And here we can see another growing problem because some people think that wild animals can be also pets. Of course, it's funny to see a capybara in a bathroom. Okay, it could be funny, why not? But the problem is when you read the comments, some people say that they would like to have a capybara as a pet, and this can have two problems. First, it can increase illegal wildlife trade. Okay, and on the other hand, this undermine conservation effort because we need a well-informed society. And this kind of behavior and this kind of information don't help to get this goal. For some people, there is, sorry, Tamara, the previous one. Thank you. For some people, there is no difference between a fox and a dog. Okay, and this is a serious problem for a conservation point of view. By the way, I have created this picture just in 2-3 seconds with a common AI program. Now, next one, please, Tamara. Another problem could be if we see a picture and video of treated animals, we can think that these animals are actually not endangered and they don't need conservation support, protection, and funding. You can see this example, this snow leopard is not real. It's an image created by artificial intelligence. And it's so realistic, it's very difficult to know if this post is real or not. And it is a problem, no, for conservation. Next one. Okay, the species distribution it can be another problem, especially for children. It can produce confusion concerning which animal species are present in a certain place. As Tamara said before, actually the children has already poor knowledge about native species and they don't know which kind of species they can find in the country. AI can make this problem even worse, no? If we see different animals in different locations. Next, please, Tamara. Increasing human wildlife conflict is another concern, okay? Because some posts can help to spread misinformation and fake content. For instance, a video showing a raptor trying to prey on a baby or a leopard trying to prey on a domestic cat are good examples of the kind of conflicts. And you know, the conservation of large predators need the society support. And this kind of post, this kind of content don't help to get this goal. Obviously, if the people think that this content is real. Next, please, Tamara. Artificial intelligence can also modify the morphology of the animals, which can confuse children and young audiences with limited knowledge about diversity, because they believe or they can believe that this content are real. But not only the children. If you read the comment of the grandmother, maybe the grandmother also think that the unicorn seeds and she wants to buy one for her granddaughter. Okay, but the problem is when we don't stop 2 or 3 seconds to think that if the content is real or not. Next, please. Okay. For many people, the most important thing in their life is to have a nice picture to post on social media. Today, for many people, it's the most important in their life. So if we create a realistic image with animal in some location, it can produce an increase of the tourists in that place, okay? And actually, some companies start to create picture with artificial intelligence to attract new customers. Okay, and this picture looks real. But this is a good example because you can see a tiger living with zebra and elephant, and the tiger live in Asia, not in Africa. Okay, so all this information can confuse us in a different way. Next one, please. And finally, AI content is likely to be biased toward mammals, okay, mainly birds, okay? And other taxa, such as reptiles, will be underrepresented, okay? Or even worse, they are shown in a negative context. So in summary, this kind of non-real content can distorted conservation narrative, can affect the public's opinion, and can reduce funding for some taxa. Okay, so this bias already exists in the real world, but now with artificial intelligence we can increase this gap. So what can we do under this situation? So next, Tamara, we can detect, educate, and advocate. We need a better tool to detect artificial intelligence, content created by artificial intelligence, and labeling must be mandatory in social media, okay? Because we need to know if the content that we are watching is real or not, okay? Bear in mind that when we are we're watching content on social media, many of us spend sometimes only 2 or 3 seconds in one video. So in 2 or 3 seconds, many people don't start to think if the content is real. Okay, and this is the problem. But above all, we need a well-informed society. In my case, I detect some AI posts because I have knowledge on animal behavior or animal ecology, but the content is becoming so realistic that increasing difficulties these tasks. Yes. Finally, to final thoughts. Okay. Next, Tamara. Who decides the boundaries of information sharing? Where is the limit? Okay. Global regulation is unlikely in the near future, I think. So education is our most powerful tool, okay? But not only for wildlife conservation or animal conservation. There you can see two not real perfect guys, I think, okay? They are not real, they was created by artificial intelligence. And this kind of content can also affect young people because they think that they are not normal, they are not perfect, okay? But in reality, okay, we are all different and nobody is perfect, but it can also affect the young people. And the last one, nature is already beautiful, no, and complex, and we think that it's not necessary to modify it. So thank you all for your attention, and we will be here for ask for your questions.
Great. Thanks, Tamara and Jose, for the very interesting and also kind of troubling presentation of the topic. That was great. I'd say we swiftly move on to Benjamin, who will give us.
Yeah, should I share the presentation? Can I share it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and share. Okay, can you see the presentation? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, I can't see you, so it's a bit harder. Okay, so for me, I'll talk about how basically like the power of AI. So how can AI enable us or help us do large-scale monitoring of biodiversity? Because like for some time, us ecologists, we've been doing field experiments and we've been trying to collect a large amount of data, or at least some focused data at local scales. But AI can help us increase the scale and increase the data collection also. So there was this actually really nice article in Nature. So it's the future of fieldwork in the age of AI. And what they mention is actually that the future role of ecologists may not be the exact same that we have right now. So it's not totally the end of fieldwork, but with all the new technologies coming, we may need to step a little bit out of fieldwork. So the reason is that we need so much data for studying biodiversity in all its at all scale, basically. Like we need some data on genetic traits, we need some behavioral data, we need abundance, distribution, and all kind of data. So we're basically not able to collect that as a team, or even like using citizen scientists, etc. So we need to use other kind of tools, and these tools were given with technology. Yeah, so in addition, so we need lots of data on specific traits, but we also need time series data. So if we want to have a complete understanding of how nature works, of how bird vocalize, or like any type of animal, how do they behave in time, we need some time series. So we need longer time series. So for instance, if I just take a bird and I try to record certain period of the day, it's like I won't have a full understanding on how he behaves. So right now we are basically drowning in the amount of data because of this, because of all the devices that are available right now. So as I say, like thanks to technologies, like we have some really cheap devices now that can collect a really large amount of data and then can be on for a really long period. So for instance, I'm working a lot with acoustic. So we're able to buy some microphones for less than $100, and we can just leave them like for 24 hours, 24 hours all year round. So then we're collecting a huge amount of data. The fact that this technology becomes less and less expensive also explains why ecologists start to rely more on them. Because it's way cheaper to buy 20 microphones than to have an entire team of ecologists going on the field and recording the devices. Also, all these devices can record a lot of new data. So we have a full holistic kind of assessment of nature. We have sound, we have visual, we have ultrasound, we have infrasound, etc. So we can basically have a full control of the ecosystem, or full monitoring of it. Yeah, so this makes the amount of data increasing. So this is just a number of occurrence in GBIF. So GBIF is a platform where we can upload data sets. So you see that the relationship is not linear. I think from 2018 onward, we have more of an exponential curve here. Yeah, and this is just for the number of occurrences, but I suspect that there is a much more dramatic increase because people tend to keep their data now, since it's way too big to be shared. So I would argue that biodiversity monitoring now is more data problem than just a field sampling problem. We're far beyond just the capacity of just a team of ecologists, basically. Like we don't have all the time to analyze this amount of data. Yeah, so AI can reduce the annotation effort. So when we collect data, we have to validate the data. We have to go through the data, right? So if I collect some images, some wildlife pictures, for instance, I need to myself go and check, like, is there a wolf there, or is there this species, or etc. Same with sound. Like when I collect my sound, I need to know which species are on the track. Then I can do the analysis. Otherwise, this is kind of useless data. So AI can help us reduce the annotation effort. So I drew some examples here. So I don't want to list everything, but just a few things that AI can help us with. Like we can derive animal behavior with that. We can derive species classification from sounds, picture. We can get some idea of abundance of some species, locomotion even. We can do some land classification and anomaly detection. So we basically can do a little bit of everything with using AI. So as I said, like AI help us to reduce the amount of work, the amount of checking that we need to do for picture, sound, etc. So the typical workflow, and so that was a workflow that we have, that we had like kind of local scale. So when we want to use AI for some smaller study in a way. So the typical workflow is like, I would deploy my acoustic recorders, for instance. I put my SD card, I leave them for a few months, then I go back, I retrieve the SD card, I put the data on my laptop, I annotate some of the data using some open source software or not. So annotating the data just means like I'm listening to my audio file. I say this is species A, this is species B. Then I can use this annotation to train an AI model on my own computer, and then I can use this model to automatize this classification. So instead of me having to annotate like a year of data, I can just annotate a few days. Then I train my AI, and then I can use the AI to analyze the rest. Okay. So this is okay at local scale because we have a few gigabytes of data, even sometimes a few terabytes. It's okay. But when you start to scale it up, it starts to be a little bit complicated. So there has been some national and transnational initiative, like collecting data across the entire country or even an entire continent. So just to mention a few projects, so there's the Australian Acoustic Observatory that's recording across Australia. The Sound of Norway, a project that we had where we were recording across Norway. And there's also a project in France that's recording sounds across France. And at transnational level, we have a few other projects. So Tadmon is the one that we're having now, where we're recording sounds across Europe to study bird migration. Then the workflow starts to be really complicated because we collect the data, then we need to retrieve the data, we need to put the data on server, annotate the data that's on the server, we need to train an AI model on the remote server, etc., etc. So we go from a local computing thing to a cloud computing workflow, which is way more complicated in that case. So just an example of the project we're having now. So Tadmon. So we have 108 sensors deployed over Europe that send data to the cloud almost in real time. We have, as you can imagine, we have a really complex data pipeline. We're dealing with 100 gigabytes of data coming in per day. So right now we have 30 plus terabytes. And we basically have to make use of two servers. So we have one server for just storing the data, just storing the 30 terabytes, and another server for just analyzing all this data. So all the setup is actually quite complex compared to just a small local study. So this setup also has some costs, and that's something that we usually don't account for when we apply for project. But I would say that nowadays it's really necessary to be careful about the costs, like the cloud costs, data storage costs, computation costs. So I just by experience, we had this cost. So for instance, for the data storage, we're paying about 200 euros a month, just for storing. But for long-term storage, for instance, is about 100 euros per terabyte per year. So this has a huge cost, especially if you're recording 24 hours a day for like 3 years, for instance. Something I would like to note also is like there's some providers who would who ask you to, there's some providers who can make it for free. Who can make storage for free, basically. So you just give them the data, you just give them your data, and then they can store it for free. In my opinion, there's no free lunch. So free storage doesn't exist. If someone asks you to store the data for free, you really need to check the terms and conditions. Like I'd rather pay for a service I know than for some like that having a service, I don't know, for free in a way. So you really need to be careful with that, especially nowadays, where data is more valuable than ever. Yeah, so all of this is great, but the AI is not perfect either. So AI output cannot automatically be used directly because they don't correlate exactly with ecological indicators. We need to do some validation. So this is especially the case because AI performance varies across species, habitats, seasons, devices. So it's really hard to have a single AI model that's applicable in all situations. Usually we need to do some tuning, basically. So for instance, on the right is just a picture showing the difference of performance of a bird classifier. So you see that there's some species of bird for which the classifier does everything wrong, and for some others, there's some mitigated performance. So we can't really use AI output as a proxy for a species richness, for instance, because we will get a biased estimate. So usually what we want to do is either fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is basically modifying a little bit the AI model with some data that we annotate. So we go from the raw data, the AI transform it into some information, and then we can get some meaningful results as long as there's a human in the loop, like as long as we retrain the AI, per se. And then we can do some result calibration, actually. So result calibration just means that we can check, actually I just realized that the two figures are identical, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't the point. So result calibration is basically we checking the output of the AI, and then we can like calibrate the output. So what I mean is that, so for instance, you can have some validation protocol where if you want to have species richness of an area, you select X samples per species and you annotate until you find one true positive, for instance. So for some species, you will not find any good detection, and then you can just discard the species from the species richness, okay? Same for species phenology. You can draw calibration curves, meaning that, yeah, calibration curve is basically like you look at the model confidence, and then you annotate a few samples per confidence bins. And then you should be able to select a threshold for which 90% of the detections are accurate. So this helps us trust the results a bit more. Okay. So there are some like good tools for annotating the data. So this is mainly for the audio domain. So an application that we developed to make the annotation pretty fast. So we serve a spectrogram of the detection plus the sound. So we have an annotator that tells us if the detection is wrong or right, and then we have it in the database, and then we can do these kind of calibration curves where we learn how to trust the AI model. Another problem is sharing data. So sharing data is really complicated with like really large data sets. So for instance, we have more than 6 million records. So we can't store it on Zenodo, GESBIO, Dryad. So any of the classical repositories don't accept that much data. So we have to store it on tape, basically at the end of the project. The thing that we can share though is like the AI detections plus the validated output, so the annotated output, and that we can put on GBIF, and that is useful for ecological monitoring. Yeah. So in conclusion, yeah. So I would argue that nowadays without AI system, is actually really hard to monitor biodiversity in all its form and fast enough and broadly enough so that we can address conservation problems. And be careful when you're setting up a large-scale monitoring system because it has lots of hidden costs, like from defective material to data storage to egress fees, etc. And so I would actually argue that nowadays the role of ecologists have changed a lot. So we are not just collecting data on the field now. We have a role of first we have a role of like going to the field to deploy some devices that will record for us the data. And we are also much more multidisciplinary. Now we need to have a small an understanding of computer science, ecology, a bit of software engineering, etc. So we need to be more aware of all the technology around it and know how to use it. And that's the end. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Benjamin. And apologies earlier, I was supposed to introduce you, but my computer glitched.
Oh,
So just to pick up on that again, Benjamin is a worker at NINA, and as you've just seen, well, his work focuses on developing and using deep learning algorithms for biodiversity conservation. He's particularly interested in AI and in bioacoustics, as well as for image processing. I think that kind of covers it, but thanks a lot for your talk. That was really interesting. And again, for everyone in the seminar, please include your questions in the chat so we can get back to them at the end. So we'll now move on to Lisa Norton's presentation. Lisa is a landscape ecologist and interdisciplinary scientist at CEH. She carries out research into options for land management, which can help in the sustainable delivery of ecosystem services. Her research focuses on monitoring and management of landscapes, and she works closely with social and economic scientists and stakeholders in interdisciplinary approaches towards sustainable environmental management of farmland. I hope that covers it. And Lisa, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk so much about my interdisciplinary work, more about the monitoring work in this one. So, slides are jumping through. So the first slide just tells you the name of the project I'm going to be talking about, and it's a project with colleagues from Lincoln University, particularly Hongri Shi, who's working as a postdoc at Lincoln. So we are interested in, sorry, I don't know why they're jumping. They've never done that before. Interesting in habitat monitoring for a whole range of reasons. Habitats obviously underpin the assessment of things like biodiversity net gain, land management, for example, agri-environment schemes or national planning. So biodiversity net gain is very much a policy in the UK, and it means that if you're going to develop something, you have to offset the biodiversity loss somewhere else in the landscape or on the site that you're developing. So we need measures of what habitats are there and what biodiversity is there in order to be able to replace it. But yeah, it can often be quite complex, expertise intensive, and sometimes difficult to scale. So AI is a possible solution for helping us do this a bit better. So already we use a lot of automated habitat monitoring. This is very annoying. So this slide, which I moved on from, includes the land cover map, which UK-CEH produce annually at 10-meter resolution from data. And that uses a kind of automated habitat monitoring with AI, with machine, I'm so sorry it's doing that, machine learning models, which use multispectral satellite data from those bands mentioned there, as well as contextual features through machine learning to classify habitats into different habitat types. So the land cover map has all that documentation around those modelling. But what we were interested in, myself and a colleague from Lincoln University, was how can you use actual photos of habitats in the field when you knew what those habitats actually were? Could you use that in some way to help improve habitat recognition? And so we decided we would use the fieldwork based element of monitoring that we do at CEH. So we do the land cover mapping, but we also do a randomly stratified sample of the UK countryside, which we visit different squares, 1 kilometre squares across the UK. Really sorry about the slides. And we do detailed vegetation mapping and plots to look at vegetation extent and condition. And we obviously take photos at these sites. We actually mainly take them so that we can relocate the plots because they're fixed. We've been doing the survey since '78, gone back 6 or 7 times now. And so we know what the habitats are. The surveyors record them when they're out there and they take a picture. So what we thought was, could we use these pictures in some way with AI to help in habitat recognition from people taking photos? So the University of Lincoln are involved in the model development. The data comes from the Countryside Survey, as well as the habitat expertise and quality assurance. And we're going to deliver at the end of it AI HAB model with an API, and we're going to also update eSurveyor, which is a UK-CEH program or app that you can download, and it helps you to identify species mainly at the moment. It's particularly been designed for use by farmers. So that's one of the platforms we would like the API to go into, but we also wanted to produce a more generally accessible API. So the data for the model development comes from these Countryside Survey photos. There's more than 10,000 ground level photos collected for plot relocation, all labelled with the habitat type. And they're also classified under UK HAB, which is a UK habitat classification. So it seeks to make sure that we have a uniform classification across the whole of the UK for all habitat types. And if you look at the names of the habitats at the bottom, they are called broad habitat types, arable and horticulture, acid grassland, calcareous grassland, etc. And that's the level that we were seeking to hit with this particular piece of work. So there's the UK HAB has a hierarchy of different habitat classifications. So I'm going to expect this to jump now, so I'll go back. So the roadmap for the development was to prepare the images in the habitat categories, to run a baseline vision model, which actually gave us 66% accuracy. I'll show you a bit more about that. And then to do a state-of-the-art vision model, which gave us a higher accuracy. And then we went on to an optimized training kind of model. And the next step will be a multimodal model. So keeps doing it. So our findings in the first stage was to use these vision transformers to capture the whole scene context. So these are the kind of pictures that we put into the model. The CNN transformer looks, you can see where the heat maps are, where they're focusing on, and they're often having to avoid a surveyor with a labeled habitat there, labeled plot number, so the photos had to avoid that and just focus on the main context. And you can see that this CNN model did it pretty well, 4 out of 5, one of them not so good, but the VIT model did better, because you can see there's more heat around the habitats in which these plots were located. So it was more often than not getting it right in line with what the surveyor had said. Right, the usual jumping. So this, it's going to do it again, isn't it now? So we then did this contrastive, I'm saying we, Hongri Shi at Lincoln did contrastive learning, which looked at really similar habitats. So grasslands often sort of grade one into another, and improved means agriculturally improved in the UK, and neutral is not so improved, and they're kind of on a gradation, so it is quite difficult to actually split these out even in the field. But we found that if we use this contrastive learning, which is the orange bars, the misclassification rate, which is what's shown on the axis, was lower with this contrastive learning. So when you were specifically saying these two, putting these two habitats against each other, if you use this contrastive learning approach, it was better at differentiating those closely aligned habitat types. So then the next stage was to actually look, how well does this do against a person who's quite good at looking at habitats? And this is the table showing the accuracies against 3 experts. the next slide, which will jump and then come back. So you'll see that expert 3, which I'm glad to say was me, was slightly better at getting the photos right than the other 2 experts. I was more experienced, probably much more used to these photos and the habitat survey, but I was pretty close to what the AI was doing in terms of interpreting the photos for habitats after it had been trained with our photos. I mean, that looks amazing, but I would say that if I was in the field, there's no way it would be better than me because I can not only look at a 3D representation of the habitat, I can also smell it, taste it, feel it, and that's a very different thing to taking a photograph. But that said, in terms of interpreting the photos, it did reasonably well so far. So these have got play buttons on them. So my colleague at Lincoln has then put this into an API, a sort of trial API in something called Hugging Face as a demo model. And if you watch, you can put your photo in, take your photo, stick it in Hugging Face like this, and then it'll have a look at it and then upload it into the demo, and it'll decide it's a 99.87% likely to be coniferous woodland, 0.4% likely to be broadleaf mixed and yew, and 0.03 bog. And then the other screen just shows us a different photo, so it's obviously taking a photo of more of a grassland there, and it goes pretty quick into this AI demo, and that one comes out with the likelihood that it's nearly 78% improved grassland. So we kind of got this API in development and gone into this website phase where you can already put these photos in and come out with a reasonable prediction of the habitat type, and that kind of encapsulates it. You capture the picture, it's a geotagged photo, goes into the API, and then it comes up with the likelihood in UK-HAB of the 3 most likely habitats. The codes there just all refer to UK-HAB codes. So the next stage really for this is foundation models, which Hongri is going to be working on, particularly at Lincoln, and he's really keen to bring in different ecological intelligence. So as well as a photo, sort of textual descriptions of the habitat, which could be the UK-HAB descriptions of habitat types, or other ones if I was in the field and I wanted to say, well, it's open heath with heather or whatever, and then some geospatial data, which may be underlying soil layers, which we can access in the UK, and or something like weather, or basically different layers, and then bring them in and see if they can improve the habitat classification. So that's kind of what Lincoln are doing. And from the CEH perspective, we're really keen to put it into eSurveyor, which is very good at identifying species. And we think that maybe if you have a habitat photo going in and predictions on that, and then it's possible we will develop something that said when it chooses the top most likely habitat, which then asks for species that we know are associated with that habitat, asks the user to go and photograph, see if it can see these species, the user, and go and photograph them, or photograph some species as well and use both the habitat image and the species photos to give a much better likelihood of habitat. That's the kind of next step for us with this. So so the summary was that the image-only AI was as good as supposedly expert level performance at this UK-HAB level 3, that it sort of looks like it's ready for pilot deployment. We have had people testing it. We've been working with stakeholders who work across sort of land businesses, and then the next steps are to do this multimodal vision model plus continued eSurveyor development. And so we have a paper out about the development of that, and there is a QR code there for anyone that wants to have a go. But yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Lisa, and thanks everyone for very interesting presentations. Again, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I guess we can start off with one from Jose to Benjamin. So, AI will help us manage and analyze data more quickly and efficiently, meaning we'll be able to publish more and faster, which has a dark side. Do you think less developed countries might be at a disadvantage due to their more limited resources? Could AI widen or narrow the gap? What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually drafting a reply. Yeah, I think that's unfortunately the case, because as I was mentioning, like there's all these hidden costs of using AI, all these computational costs and storage costs and all that. And when applying for project, that's also, I mean, now for instance, Tabmon, that was a really big part of the project. So I'm kind of afraid that researchers in Africa or South America, for instance, they will be at a disadvantage because the cost of running AI, the cost of a GPU is kind of a universal anyway. Yeah, I think there will be some drawbacks in using that, and I think like the Western countries will actually benefit more of AI. Well, we see like all the computer clusters, they are mainly US, Europe, like probably China also. So yeah, that would be my thought at least.
Lisa, for example, would have your work with AI have been possible if there hadn't been all of that data collection which had happened years prior?
No, that's what it entirely relies on. That's why we were so keen to use a really good resource of labelled habitats.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it can really come into its own with the combination with the human in there, with the human expert, because we are, we may be redundant because we can't be out in the field all the time with collecting, but there are expertises which are very difficult to replace actually, because of the way that we can interpret things from with very many different senses. So
just to add quickly to my answer also, I think so all these AI technologies, they rely a lot on GPUs. So one of the problems is like we have all the GPUs, like in Europe, China, US, they have the clusters, but we're still able to run some AI models on GPU. Like we have some clusters at Mina, for instance. But I think for some of the researchers, again in the less developed country, having a GPU is a huge cost for them. Like it's way harder to get access to them. So then they're not able to run the experiment that we can run, for instance. So it's it will widen the gap. And I see that Lisa also had the comment on like carbon impact and energy use. Yeah, also. I think for now the cost of using AI is still more important, in the sense that environmentally it is more important, the energy use and the carbon impact, but from a project perspective, I think the costs are slightly more important. And also I think right now we're tending to develop smaller and smaller models, and we're not really developing everything from scratch. So as you showed in your presentation, you're also fine-tuning the model. So this has less of an impact environmentally, I think. So that may be another solution.
I've partly raised that because I know that there's been research done at the university that I work at on AI, and it's a huge energy consumer, really quite big and getting very much bigger all the time. So I think it's something we need to be really wary about.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether the carbon and the energy use come from the data storage or the use of AI actually, because I think most of the data centers are actually more for storing the data rather than just running AI.
Yeah, probably both. Yeah, the data storage is huge. Yeah.
No, you're muted, Guy.
Oops. Apologies. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what you mentioned, Lisa, on this kind of more human side of things, because I think your talks have been great in that they bring this whole idea of, well, also about values. I mean, biodiversity conservation, whether it's wildlife or anything else, obviously is, it does depend on actual data and observation and monitoring, but it is also shaped heavily by, very subjective things and people's perceptions. So I kind of want to know a bit from you, Tamara and Jose, you picked up on this on AI and changing people's perspectives. How do you think that these two things balance each other out? So you have, huge potential for data monitoring and for informing management. On the other hand, you have potential, public perceptions changing vastly.
Yeah, good question. I think that maybe we can think, we would like to think that there will be more positive effect of artificial intelligence than negative effects. I would like to think that the content will be soon labeling. We can fast check if the content is real or not, and this is the main problem. Okay, once we can detect if the content is real or not, I think that the negative consequence will be lower. Okay, and the positive effect will be higher.
So I think somebody has a hand up. You mentioned, Mara?
Not anymore. I think it
Nothing.
was some error.
In that case, I would like to raise my hand and ask a question for any and all of the speakers. So in my home state in the U.S. of Vermont, there's currently a policy movement to ban the construction of new AI data centers, to have at least a 5-year moratorium on the construction of new centers. And the reason behind that is both the direct environmental impact on water usage, energy usage, but also these environmental justice issues where people's energy costs are being driven up, and the data centers tend to be built outside of more economically underprivileged communities, poor communities. In the south of the U.S., it's typically around communities of color, and there's these issues of massive noise pollution, in addition to raising people's energy costs and having pollution of the local environment. So to make this question more general, I'm just interested to hear if any of you would support an initiative like that to do some sort of temporary ban on new construction for environmental justice reasons, or if you would push back against that. And I would like to hear why.
I'll say something. I think that's really interesting that they've decided to go that far. And yeah, I think I would probably support it, because I think we need to stop and think before we just run off headlong into the distance and realize that we've made mistakes that we are going to find it really difficult to row back on. So I think it will be not a bad idea at all. I did read something in the paper relatively recently about some very large firms stopping some of their development because they realized that it was actually going to be detrimental to them in the longer run. Yeah, I think there's definitely in some areas, there's definitely some people thinking that now might be a really good time to stop and make proper informed decisions before we lose ourselves.
Jose, Tamara, Benjamin, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. It's like it's more like AI for what also, because I think lots of the data centers are built on premises that people want more AI. And we see that, like, for instance, Microsoft is putting AI in all its product, and like there's no, I mean, people don't really want that also. So I think, as Lisa says, like we need to stop a bit and think why. In the case of biodiversity conservation, I think our use of AI is so small compared to everything else that I like. I don't think we would need this kind of structure. But yeah, I would be also for kind of pausing the development, wondering like where AI is useful, because it's useful for some things, but it's not useful for other things. And yeah, and see a little bit where we want to go, basically.
In my opinion, AI development is getting very fast. No, and we need to build new center, not process of information. And when we are in a hurry, we don't do the things in the right way. This is the same for renewable energy. We need to implement new energy that sometimes we do very fast, and we don't stop to think what we have to do, which is the best play, which is the environmental impact, what is the balance between positive and negative effects, and that's the problem, I think.
Thank you. There's another question on maybe a bit more technical, but when you speak of AI, are you referring, this has been asked by someone in the chat, are you referring to just machine learning from 1950s technologies, or are we talking about modern large language models? Benjamin or Lisa?
Yeah, I can. I mean, we may all have different interpretation of that, but to me, AI means the model itself, but the surrounding technology. So it's like LLM plus storage around it, and also like all the deep learning based classifiers. So I think now AI is synonymous of deep learning based models, basically. Yeah.
Thanks. We also have a question for Lisa from Andrew. Are there plans to have other habitat classification integrated into the AI HAB model, for example, EUNIS? And has anything been done to look at the condition as well as classification?
That's quite a difficult question. So it is focused on UK HAB particularly, because we have the UK countryside survey, so we know we have those labelled plots for large, well, a good representative sample of UK, which we don't know that we have for EUNIS, although I believe there are the Lucas plots out there, so it might be possible to do something with EUNIS data. Condition is definitely something, but it's we're thinking about, but it's even something we're thinking about in the UK HAB classification alone, without then putting it through AI. I don't think we're entirely sure how to classify condition on habitats, even outside of using the technology. Maybe the technology could help us do it better. I'm not sure, but yeah, it is a possible area. It definitely is a possible area for us to go into. Yeah, barring the fact that I've just said that maybe we need to put a hold on AI technologies. One has to think, can we justify it? Is it going to be useful enough? Is it going to make a difference to biodiversity and habitats, enough of a difference that it's worth putting that energy in?
Great, thanks a lot. Tyler, you have a question. How do we educate older generation while well past school age about media literacy with regards to AI-generated images of wildlife, etc.? For context, my grandma thought babies were born with deer antlers.
That's a true story, and it predates AI. So there was a TV show on Netflix recently called Sweet Tooth about babies being born with deer antlers, and she read a newspaper article that was reviewing the show and thought it was actual news about this phenomenon of babies being born with deer antlers. So that was before AI was even in the picture. So yeah, I was just wondering, like, people who are still in school, you have the opportunity to increase their media literacy. But for people who are outside of the educational sphere, how do we achieve this?
Yeah, that's a good point. We think that social media is a good source of information. It could be, but it's not the only source of information. We always say that now, when you see something that it could be real or not, you can set information on website, you can read books, or you can find the information in other sources than in social media. Even you can use artificial intelligence, and you can use GTP to ask if this content could be real or not. But the problem is when you don't stop to think if the content is real or not, you spend only 2-3 seconds watching a video, and you just push like to video, and that's all, and next one. Okay. And I always recommend it to look information in other source of information, official website. You can use other site, but not only social media. Okay?
Thanks. I mean, this media literacy is quite an interesting topic, because actually this is something you read about basically every day on how you regulate use of AI generated content, and like, what do you think could be? I mean, seeing that this technology is skyrocketing and basically becoming, you can't really tell what is what and how far apart they are. What is your take on where this is going to go in the near future? And like, for example, earlier you were talking about the positive effects of AI generated content. Could you also maybe develop a bit on that?
Which technology do you mean?
AI generated content.
Okay, with the positive side, not of the engineered content.
Yeah, earlier you were mentioning the.
Yeah, if you create a content with artificial intelligence, and this content is realist, okay, you can represent the real world. This has a positive effect, okay, but you need to explain that you have created artificial intelligence, and this is a not real content. In this case, it could be positive. For instance, do you remember this film Finding Nemo? You know this? Do you remember the film? So Finding Nemo represents not the real world of the sea, and the animals look like similar than in the real world. So we can create artificial intelligence and we can create hyper-realistic images and video to represent the reality and to improve the knowledge of the people about biodiversity. Of course, it could be possible. But our work was only focused on the negative effects, okay?
I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to this. So what you're getting to is that basically the accessibility of it is kind of the positive side, but it's also what's kind of make it an issue. Would anyone else want to develop on that? Jan is saying in the chat, some have said that the ethics of AI is no different from a lot of technology, it just depends on its use. The combustion engine is critical in the car that knocks you down, but is also in the ambulance that takes you to the hospital. Okay, well, are there any more questions that anyone would like to ask? Any final comments? Okay, Rebecca is saying, I would like to know, how did you come to work with AI computational methods? Did you collaborate with computer scientists? Did you already have programmer experience? Maybe Benjamin, you'd like to answer that?
Yeah, I'm actually more. I did my PhD in statistics, so like the switch to AI was a little bit easier. But like from what I see, AI is primarily software engineering. So like AI methods are not technically really complicated, but what's complicated is more the software engineering around it. Most of the AI models you will find, like you can find them on GitHub, you can implement them on your computer and everything. But I think it's mainly, yeah, if you want to work with AI or get started with AI, is primarily learning Python. And yeah, I think that's the best you could do.
What about yourself? What about yourself, Lisa?
I would say find a computer scientist. I'm older, so I have to say that the people we've been working with, the computer specialists, really, they do know their stuff. They are steaming through these things very fast, and yeah, I'm there to sort of ground truth them and just explain the realities of what they're looking at, and yeah. And why things might be not coming out as they expect them to, or yeah. But I've found it really fascinating working with them, and you know, and in a way, it's been good for them to be looking at ecological things, because that's not usually what they're doing. They're more often than not looking at just systems and other systems and digital things, and so actually I think they're quite enjoying looking at some real world field photos and speaking to people that look at things in a very different way. So yeah, nice from that perspective to do some interdisciplinary approaches.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we're on our last 5 minutes here. At this point, I think we can wrap it up, Tyler. Unless there's any final questions.
Yeah, last chance. Unmute yourself if you have an urgent question. Raise your hand. Wave your hands in front of the camera. Otherwise, I think this was a very interesting discussion. And our speakers did a really good job of covering, I think, a broad spectrum of perspectives concerning this topic. And I think that's one of the most important things that Alternet can offer, is a platform for facilitating discussions and inspection of these issues that are very complex regarding ecosystem sciences and conservation and impact on ecosystems themselves. So as Jessica mentioned at the beginning of this seminar, between our 34 Alternet partner institutes, we cover a broad spectrum of not only perspectives, but of expertise. And most importantly, I think we cover a broad spectrum of geography. So we have partner institutes in Alternet spanning from Portugal to Estonia. Now is probably a convenient time for me to again mention that if your institute is not currently an Alternet partner and is interested in joining the community, we're always looking to recruit new members, and you can always just reach out to me or check out our website, which is alterneteurope.eu. You can find more information about our network and our activities there. So as a reminder, this is the very first installment in our newly relaunched Alternet Seminar Series. There will be more talks on equally hot topics in the upcoming months. So keep an eye out for announcements about our upcoming seminars. And if you want to sign up for the Alternet newsletter, that's probably the best way to receive news about these events and other opportunities from the Alternet community. So with all that said, I would like to thank our speakers and especially our hosts, Kyle and Tamara. And I'd like to thank you all for joining. So see you at our next seminar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you all for your attention.